What's going on, everybody? LK here. You may have been hearing, if you've been paying attention to Guilty Gear Strive, that people are rating a certain character that usually got rated pretty decently, pretty low this version. Specifically, like low tier or bottom tier, or some people have even said this character is the worst character in Guilty Gear Strive at the moment. That's right. Today we're going to look at the kind of unusual case of Testament. Specifically with Testament, I generally rated this character in Season 2 around mid-tier and the defining middle character, fair character of the game. So what is going on with Testament right now? We're going to look into Testament's pros and cons and why I feel like a lot of people feel like Testament is not very strong in this game at the moment. So first, we'll look at the advantages to playing Testament. So for starters, Testament has very large buttons in general. They're able to control a lot of range. This is far slash, very large move. 6H, while more situational, also covers a ton of range. It's especially good as an anti-jump with the opponent back to the corner, somewhat like this. 5H also is a pretty big disjointed move that Testament has. So this is from round start position. Baiken's 5H actually whiffs from here on Testament compared to Testament reaching. Having big buttons is generally just good. Being able to control a lot of space just by kind of standing here, having the threat, is pretty nice to have, so definitely an advantage for Testament. Number 2 is Red Wild Assault. So Red Wild Assault, I've said this in a few videos already, is the best Wild Assault. It lets you convert off things you could not normally convert off of. So for example, usually Testament doesn't really get anything off far slash unless you get a counter hit or something. But with Red Wild Assault, this just combos, so this is a great advantage to have. Specifically in Testament's case, which is not very common, is they could do 2K2D into Red Wild Assault and continue the combo. They get to convert off low attack level moves like far slash and 6P, so you also get combos like this. From round start, burst safe, wall break, into stain, which is pretty strong. Testament is also kind of, let's say, like slippery. What I mean is they have some properties on their moves, plus their backdash that makes it just kind of hard to pin them down sometimes in neutral. So for example, we're going to look at Testament's 2K, this low profiles. If I just use far slash at my ideal range, I'll connect to Testament, right? If they do 2K, there's a range where they'll just go under my far slash where I would hit them normally because Testament's 2K has a low profile on it. Just like that. Another example comes from Testament backdash. So while it might look like a normal backdash, it actually is faster than a standard 5-frame invincible backdash. So there are 3 types of backdashes in this game as a general review. 4-frame invincible backdashes, 5-frame invincible backdashes, and 6-frame invincible backdashes. Characters like Soul and Kai have standard backdashes with 5 frames invincibility, 20 frames total duration. The heavy characters plus Sin tend to have the 6-frame backdashes, but they're longer. And then like the faster characters like Milia or Bridget have very short total duration backdashes, but also the least amount of invincibility. But amongst the 5-frame characters, Testament is pretty unique in that they have a 5-frame backdash, but it's faster than 20 frames. They're not the only character that has this. Happy Chaos also has this, and Jacko also has this. But this fact makes their defensive backdash actually a really strong tool to escape pressure, especially considering their other defensive options aren't that great. Like the super isn't that great, Testament doesn't have an invincible meterless reversal. Testament arguably has one of the best 6Ps in the game, or the best 6P in the game, mostly in just that the move is enormous and just really hard to just beat from the air unless you have some move with some special property. Next, Testament's meter build is pretty good just because they're doing a lot of stuff in neutral. The character's pretty active in neutral between moving forward, moving back and forward, approaching with either like a low profile move like 2K or 6P, which means they'll make you block or hit you, which will lead to getting resource. Every time they do a special move, they build resource. Every time they stain you, they build resource. When they pop stain, they build resource. And they're generally using special moves to control the screen a lot, which means they have a lot of opportunities to generate meter quickly. Then finally, and this is a little bit more of a subtle thing, it's not very hard to learn the character, and they're pretty low maintenance as a character. So what I mean is, once you learn Testament basics, it's not very hard to go back to Testament. You're not likely to like make mistakes with Testament compared to some other characters. So next we're going to look at cons, disadvantages. So first will be about Testament's reversal. Testament's reversal is not great, for lack of a better word. We're going to knock down here the sword super. So Calamity 1 is pretty slow. Baiken is a great example to show this because she can't actually safe jump fast meterless reversals. Now Calamity 1 is a projectile, which is pretty situationally useful, and Testament does have the option to use PRC super. So simply put, it is a technique that you use on slower reversals like this or Axel's Sickle Storm. Technically you could do it with any super, but it's very powerful with these slower supers that makes it so you can PRC the super, but only spend 50 meter and keep the invincibility, which is actually pretty good, especially if the opponent doesn't have counterplay for it. And it looks something like this. So you see, like, I meted my normal, but they still managed to get out anyway. While this is good, again, the counterplay for this is not that difficult. So using the same example here, after wall break, okay, here's one example of something you could do against it. So here's something I would do specifically with Baiken to fight this tactic, where you use the tatami mat to catch them after. So there's definitely counterplay to it, but it's strong to have, especially if they don't know how to fight it, but overall, the super is not that great as a reversal. Number 2 is a common one that if you watch this channel for a while, you would have heard me say over and over and over again, but it is very important in this game. Testament is not that consistent at converting their hits. So, while aside, Far Slash is a great example. Testament's Far Slash is bigger than their 5H, and of course you have a special cancel option in Fireball, but it doesn't combo from here. So there are times where you get certain hits, but you can't push them. Stain is supposed to fill in this gap, but you have to do something else to have them stained in the first place. So you'd have to have something like this happen first, and then all of a sudden now your Far Slash will lead into some type of knockdown, but that requires putting a status effect on them. The character also has plenty of gaps on their offense. You might think this doesn't matter that much because there are top tier characters that have this problem. So for example, Nago has a ton of gaps in his offense, but it's not technically a negative for him. But in Testament's case, it's definitely a struggle. So there's a couple of things that Testament players have to worry about. One is the classic 2K 2D gap. A bunch of characters have this. Chit has this, Milia has this, Testament has this, Gold Lewis has this. A lot of characters actually have a gap in between their 2K and 2D. This lets you gamble around options quite a bit. Testament's issue is that they don't have a lot of good alternate options in this case. You can go for 2K 6P, which is just airtight, which in my opinion is one of the most reliable options. 2K into 6H is pretty decent in this spot too, but it's not that effective against fuzzy mashing. So delaying a button press in order to block the 2D but mash the 6H. If I was to do a random recording with just the 3 options, it would look something like this. Another common pressure problem for Testament does involve their Far Slash. So the Far Slash is huge, but it doesn't have a lot of block stun. And again, both the 2H and 5H tend to whiff from max range, which means at a baseline, they would have to special cancel. So if they pick a common option, like say the Fireball, the thing is here, there's not enough block stun, and you can go over and punish. This is kind of annoying for Testament to deal with, and they have to do a bunch of hard callouts. So the main one you would see is something like this, where they'll do a delay H Fireball, which does solve that problem, but then it goes into a guessing game that, in my opinion, when I play Testament, is kind of annoying to deal with. So this aspect also exists here. So this is pretty much Testament's win condition. It's getting the opponent with their back to the wall with Stain. However, they're still advantageous here. It's a really hard guess for the defender, and you really are kind of screwed when your back is to the wall and Testament is looping pressure here compared to this situation. This last point might be the most important point though, because for example, recently I'm kind of high on Baiken. I think she actually is high tier. I think I rated her a pinch too low on my tier list because of some new stuff that's come out with her. But Baiken also doesn't have the best conversion ability of all time, but she has a couple of things to make up for that helps you with match flow things, right? Things like using Tether helps a lot with these things. So Testament's last big problem, in my opinion, is this concept of how fast the character is. So it's almost, frankly, like a trading card game. So a super simple example would be like Pot of Greed in Yu-Gi-Oh! For anyone played, right? You play Pot of Greed, it's 1 card, you get 2 cards, you're +1, okay? So fighting games have this aspect where some characters are considered 2-step characters, where You need to do something to get the actual thing that you want. A lot of characters in this game, they have win conditions like, oh, I get next to you and you are guessing around pressure that's like instant and advantageous. So like that's like Soul, for example. Some characters knock you down and loop mix-ups. They could do these mix-ups from blocking, which is incredibly powerful, or they might have to hit you first. Baiken kind of has this aspect. If she knocks you down with H Kabari or throws you, she's in this essentially a win condition situation. Like she's very, very advantageous in this situation. So all it takes is I throw you, I can win off this throw. I can sequence this throw into a victory. Testament's ideal situation is to get this positioning with Stain. That's the important thing, with Stain. Stain lets them push pressure like crazy. So this is a simple example, but if the opponent doesn't know what to do about this, they will just have to sit here. If you have experience against Testament, you'll see there's actually quite a bit of gaps, quite a good places I could gamble here, but this is essentially one of the ways that Testament wins the game. Pushing this advantage, building resource at their own pace, and then extending when they want to into either like a high-low situation or a strike-throw situation that is heavily leveraged by Stain. In the corner, it's pretty easy to get this because you're basically guaranteed to get a crow. It's very hard to get away from this crow. Like even if I block, I can't really jump. Testament can just pull up. But the problem is you need to do this from neutral. You don't usually get this guaranteed just from making them block. So the character is considered slow to access their win condition. Generally, you'll see Testament players do like these type of fireballs into Crow and then chase you somehow, run over you, pin you down, try to pop Stain, and then push their offense from there. So this extra step involving Stain slows the character down. That combined with inconsistent conversion ability means a bunch of hits you do get before Stain don't do anything. It just gives you a chance to stain them, which is good for Testament, but another character would have maybe comboed you or at least put the opponent in a more direct disadvantage situation. So another way you could put this is it's hard to access Testament's win condition when you, the Testament player, want it. Despite having many strengths and having some best-in-class tools like 6P, 2K, and a great backdash, since the Crow has to connect for you to stain the opponent, if the opponent knows how to play around the Crow, it could be really hard to actually get an opponent stained unless you have them near the corner. This is of course a simple example, but this is one you'll see a lot in Baiken vs Testament, where Baiken will try to low profile the Crow after the Succubus gets put on screen. And there's far more than this too. You could try doing an anti-zoning move, you could try using resource to get close and react and see what you can do. There's a lot of ways to deal with this. You can even try clashing with your own projectile. There's a lot of ways you can work around this move. So Testament is kind of an odd character because on paper their toolkit is solid, but the speed issue matters extra for them in this version of the game because Wild Assault speeds up every other character. If there is a solution to this for Testament, it would be trying to convert Wild Assault better. I actually don't know if Testament has the same things that some other characters have where they can break the wall from like anywhere. You know, like Chip, characters like Chip and Eno can break the wall reliably from basically any distance away from the corner with their Wild Assault. I don't know if Testament has that ability. I see a window for them to be helped with Red Wild Assault. I feel like Red Wild Assault was made to help characters like this who don't convert that well. But yeah, that's my feelings on Testament at the moment and why you're hearing this thing of Testament is not good, Testament is not good. So the character, again, has a pretty solid toolkit in my opinion. It just doesn't mesh very well, especially with how some characters got sped up by Wild Assault. Let me know what you guys think though. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.